Welcome everybody to episode 43 of Future Strong. My name's Nicky Garcea and I am unbelievably excited about this episode because we have the wonderful Becky Foden from EY, who she might not know, but I have been hoping would join us for about 12 months. So we finally got her, which is wonderful. For those of you that don't know me or who have not listened to Future Strong before, I'm one of the co-founders of Capfinity, and Capfinity is a talent acquisition and talent mobility business specializing in all things Generation Z and Alpha. And at Future Strong, we bring people on, we talk about making the future stronger. And today we're going to have a great time talking about technology at EY UK and some of the things that Rebecca gets up to. But first of all, my great friend and co-host, who I am going to see, I don't know now, like the 5th time this year, because I'll get to see you next week, Lindsey Pollak. Say hi to everybody.
Hi, everybody. My name is Lindsey Pollak. Besides being president of the Nicky Garcea fan club, I am also an author and speaker. I write about generational differences in the workplace. I'm going to call Nicky out. This is the first time we have mentioned recruiting Generation Alpha. So we're going to have to explore that one and add it to the list. Alphas being kids under about 10 years old. I'm also a proud brand ambassador for Capfinity and delighted to be your co-host on Future Strong. As always, we invite you to introduce yourselves in the chat. We've already got our good friend, Fred Burke, who is in sunny Provincetown, Massachusetts today. Also representing Massachusetts, we have our good friend and colleague, Trudy Steinfeld. Please introduce yourselves. We love your questions. We love your comments. So please keep them coming throughout the chat. Nicky, back to you.
Thanks so much, Lindsey. And I'm supporting a little bit of a cold today. So hopefully I'm clear and people can hear me, but I'm a little bit more snuffly than I'd like to be. That's obviously a very British word for any Americans listening in. So first of all, Becky, would you tell us a little bit about yourself and your amazing career and some of the things that you're passionate about before we dig into EY and some of the things you're getting up to?
Yeah, hi everyone, and may I just say it's such a privilege to be here today, and I'm also a co-cheerleader of Nicky, so I've had the pleasure to work with Nicky now for about 8 years actually, so during my time at Transport for London and also at EY, and also I have 2 Generation Alpha children that are twins, so working at EY as head of student recruitment is such a privilege because I can also look at it through the lens of my children. We've got 5 years left when they enter the workforce, and I will say that it's going to be quite interesting because they're a completely different generation. So as I've said, my name is Becky Foden. I'm head of student recruitment at EY. And for those of you that may not know EY, most people have a blank face or they really completely get it. But we're a Big 4 professional services and consulting advisory firm, so one of the Big 4. And we have over 300,000 employees across 140 countries. My remit is purely the UK and so that's Northern Ireland.
Thank you so much. We have quite a group of listeners here, Becky, from all around the world. Mm-hmm. We have Raluca from Romania. Welcome and thanks for joining us. We've got our friend and former Future Strong guest, Maura Quinn from Boston, our colleague Latoya Hodge in beautiful sunny Florida. We have Pradeep from Western New York, our friend Mike Summers from Lafayette College. Hi, Mike. Stephen James from Devon in the UK, Jordan from Central Pennsylvania. So we have a really nice global group listening to us today. Becky, can you tell us a little bit about your journey to your current role at EY? What got you into this field and how did you get to your current position?
Okay, so where do I start with this? It's such a great question because I ask myself all of the time, how did I end up at EY? And EY is Hollywood. It's the yellow sign on a hill, and I'll come back to that later. But in terms of my career journey, I would say that it's been quite difficult and also challenging. I'm very ordinary, really. I'm from a very ordinary state school. Whilst at school, there were very, very few role models that I could look up to. And also, my background is a little bit unique in that I'm from a dual heritage background. I have a very confusing identity, often misidentified. I've written a blog on this on LinkedIn. And also, I was the first generation to actually finish a degree. So that's another story as well. I think going through school, I did not have a clear career path. I definitely lacked confidence, but I knew that deep down within myself that I had potential. It was almost bubbling inside of me all of the time, but I couldn't quite tap into that or really understand what that meant. And I feel that through the passage of time, it's really it's something that I'm really in tune with now, but it's taken me some years to get there. I managed to graduate finally, and I actually fell into recruitment like most people do. But what I would say is that I absolutely love TA. I could talk about TA for hours and probably bore most people here. But I think TA is a very dynamic and brilliant industry. We're always selling great positive stories and bringing employees into fantastic organisations, but also helping them to thrive. So there's no better job to work in than TA. Why EY? Well, first of all, EY, I'm really humbled to work for EY and also to lead the great student recruitment team. I would say that it's a small and mighty team. We're a team of about 40 people, but actually we're hiring 2,500 roles across 17 locations. So it is very, very challenging, but EY is definitely strongly aligned to my purpose. I'd like to ensure that EY has access to the most diverse and talent from different backgrounds, and I see myself as one of those talents from that background. And I think there's a massive opportunity for EY to hire these hidden talent gems like myself. And so for me, it's about shaping young people's lives for the future. As it happened, as I actually left university, I did actually apply to a professional services firm, and I won't tell you which one, but I actually failed the maths test, the dreaded NRT, which Nicky knows all about. And I completely lost confidence actually in myself. And there is a great irony around this in that I'm now working for one of the big four firms, and I'm able to impact the student recruitment process to ensure that we are accessible, inclusive, but also removing those hidden recruitment barriers to ensure that EY has access to the greatest pool of talent. And I feel that all of the roads or pathways have actually led me here, and it's not by coincidence. Also, I think there is some other roads that led me into EY. So, for example, my time at Barclays, that really stood out to me. At Barclays, this was where I really started to understand what it meant about coming from the wrong side of the tracks, but really actually standing out as an individual. We used to do lots of motivation interviews called SIDS, and they were called top grading, which is slightly controversial, but actually there was a really good reason behind them, and we started to bring talent in from very different backgrounds in terms of leadership talent. And that's when I really started to believe in myself, right through to joining Transport for London, and that having recruited for all of the leaders around Transport for London with a big focus on diversity and particularly female leaders. And I used to coach many women around, you need to fake it, make it, become it, stop walking the tightrope. You need to get out there and be a positive role model. And I realized I was actually doing that to myself. So that's it in a nutshell, but it's really a journey that I've been on, but it's really helped me to come into EY with a very clear view of my own purpose, but also trying to really make a positive impact.
Thanks so much, Becky, and for speaking so authentically. You've had a couple of people kind of cheer you on. We've got Rashita from London. Trudy Steinfeld wants you to know that we're all talent acquisition geeks that listen into Future Strong. And my colleague Latoya, small and mighty teams get the job done every time. So lots of support for you. If we can, and it's hard at these times when you've got so much going on, particularly as you go out on campus in the coming weeks, but what do you see as a talent acquisition leader working in emerging talent as some of the biggest kind of challenges and the opportunities right now at these really quite unique times that we're facing?
So this is such a great question, and also as a mum, with twins who are Generation Alphas, this inhabits my mind a lot around what do those future opportunities or jobs look like. In the last 20 years of working in-house in TA, there are roles now that didn't exist before. So we have to be really nimble and agile and to really be curious for the future. For me, there's a couple of optics to look at. So, from a business perspective, we know that Gen Zs will be 30% of our workforce by 2030. And not only that, millennials are already half of our workforce. At EY in particular, the average age is 28, which is really young. I feel mega old, but most of the people at EY are very young. And this is a generation that has, very, very influential. They have huge spending and buying power, but also, and I think this is, a big, challenge that this generation faces, in that they're being brought up in a global crisis. So, they are dealing with war, right now, COVID, digital disruption. We've got digital exclusion with the haves and the have-nots. And that's something that is high on my mind when we're thinking about recruitment process. We've got Me Too movement, BLM. This has all happened within the last 5 years. Food security, climate change. It's just doom and gloom, isn't it? For this generation. So for me, I think, the opportunity here, though, is that the generation is very, very diverse and very ethnically diverse. And I think for an organisation, that diversity of thought that we're going to bring in as future leaders, and if we can overcome some of our own biases around when people should be able to move into those leadership positions, and not based on age, but based on merit, I think can only be great for companies. And I think that will have a much more positive impact to organisations. So these individuals want to have more transparency, and they want to have a positive impact, and organisations will have to have much more of a positive impact to society. So that's something I'm really excited about. For me as a leader, then, dealing with all of that, it's tough out there right now. So last year we had 35% reduction in applications in every single student program, whether it was a graduate program, whether it was an internship, or whether it was a school leaver opportunity. There's many reasons but for that, but some of the main reasons are the loss of learning. So students were not having career advice at school due to lack of also any work experiences. So the soft skills have been really impacted. Also, students now are becoming much more discerning around career choices. So there is a much more narrow applicant pool than we've ever seen. Delayed adulthood as well. So we're hearing that students are preferring to stay in higher education. And one of the stats which really wows me every time, and it's one that I often drop into the business when we're talking to them about change, is that, do you know that only 45% of undergraduates right now are actually looking for work, and there's 55% that just don't know. They either are staying in education, they're in perhaps a bit of an alternate career route, or perhaps not confident because of the loss of learning. So the shrinking of that talent pool is forever shrinking. So it is still difficult for an organisation like EY to attract, retain, and also to hire the best quality diverse talent. And the other point to make is that students now, and Nicky, I know that we've been talking about this a lot, but they are 3 months behind their key academic milestones because of COVID. And what we saw this year in our current recruitment process is that between a 10 to 15% drop in assessment scores. And I know that, Nicky, you've mentioned that across CAP data as well. So for me, as an early careers leader, it's around how do we now translate that into better recruitment outcomes? And also, how do we put ourselves in the shoes of the students and not thinking about what we want, and almost that kind of broadcasting, we want to hire people, but fundamentally we might need to support them differently, and we might need to change some of our processes to accommodate the very disruptive environment that's around us right now.
What a spectacular recap of how challenging things are right now. And I really appreciate your empathy for the students and what they've been through. Mike Summers called out the 3 words you used, which I also jotted down: nimble, agile, and curious. And I think you're such a beautiful example of that. Becky, I'm going to cheat and ask you the question you just asked yourself, which is, what do we do when students are in this position? How is EY thinking about what support students might need? And I'd really love to hear from you, the voice of the students. What are they telling you that they need and they want? So what have you learned, through this difficulty? We've discovered these statistics. How do we start to address them?
So this is a really good question. And I think sometimes we can jump to conclusions a lot, and also hold our own bias as well around what we think students need. Interestingly enough, I actually sat on an apprentice workshop this week, and there were about 10 apprentices that EY has hired since 2013, so at different levels. So some of them have moved into senior manager roles, or actually just absolutely fresh business apprentices. And something that came out of this, was a very common message, is that they want to know very basic things. Actually, it's not what we think they want to know, and it's things like, how do we prepare them for the workforce and to be job ready? So, for example, there was lots of talk about, I don't know how to write an email in a business context. It's basic skills, basic office skills. So it's not about, obviously there's an element around they need to know about the organisation and the role and have a realistic job preview. But when they actually come into an organisation, it's really important that we help them with some very, very basic skills that we perhaps assume that students have. Having worked in the workplace for many years, I'm pretty dab hand now at writing emails, but that's because I've been coached from actually some of the very best. I remember sitting at Barclays with a HR director who absolutely drilled me on how to write an email, and how to make that business case. Whereas when school leavers are coming out of school, they have not been given that level of information. Also, other things that they want are things like how to introduce yourself in a meeting, and that's very, very basic. But what can they say? What can't they say? Should they be authentic, or should they just be succinct? Is that kind of elevator pitch around themselves as a professional? What kind of business attire should they wear now in the new virtual hybrid environment? So there's lots of ambiguity now, because now we're not all in the office. What I have seen at EY, which is really refreshing, lots of young people, as I said, the average age is 28, they're coming into the office wearing jeans. This is great. I could never imagine that when I was that age, and walking into the office wearing jeans. So it's great. And I think that we need to be much more agile and nimble, and we need to have more empathy. But we also need to provide more guidance as well, in terms of, where are the red lines. If you're in a client meeting, perhaps wearing jeans is not appropriate, but actually coming into a meeting in the office, being, able to be social at work, that's absolutely fine. And so I think those are the messages that I heard from the apprentices, and that completely blew my mind, actually, because those were not the thoughts that I had. I was thinking they want to hear about EY as a brand and about this specific business area, and also we need to talk to them about sustainability and all of these things. Yes, they're important, but actually there's some very basic and common principles that we need to adopt, and that's actually supporting them to actually be ready for work.
It's reminding me, Becky, Lindsey and I often talk about the level of clarity that applicants want, that candidates want, and we can sometimes think that it's very complicated and there's this very new thing that they're after, but actually there's some fundamentals, and I think you've given us great examples of those. One of the things in our presentation, Lindsey and I often reference your work, because there was a quote when we did some research, which was, "A crisis is a horrible thing to waste." And I think one of the challenges with returning to campus events, returning to the office, is how much do you go back to what you've done before, and how much do you evoke a level of change? And one of the things I'd love you to speak about is the work that you've been doing in partnership with Capfinity, but using virtual reality to create really the world's first hybrid internship. And I don't want to take any of the credibility away from all the great work that Capfinity's done, but I think it's fair to say that you have been a driver of that level of innovation. And it's something that you have seen the opportunity to use that technology. Would you just share kind of your thoughts of why do it, and some of the things that you think other people might be able to learn from what you've done in this internship space?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm fairly disruptive in a way that I would like to say is curious. I have a very curious mindset, and I think when I came into EY, it was very evident to me that EY is a great organisation, but not only that, they were delivering exceptional work, and our processes are actually fantastic. That they're not broken, because I just want to put that out there. But given to your point around the crisis and the changing circumstances that we saw around EY, we had hyper growth, and also there was a huge drop in applications, particularly also around our DE&I drivers. It meant that we need to look at things through a slightly different lens, and also thinking about agility. So how do we react to the market and create a process that allows us to be able to be agile and make changes as we go through the hiring process. So for me, getting the team on board initially was around using data and lots of market insights. So, just to give you an example, we started, we looked at our whole process, and we have about 30% talent loss just of people voluntarily leaving the process because it was taking too long. So that was a real challenge for the team. So we started to embark on these conversations with the business around the talent loss. And as those conversations evolved, it allowed us to have other conversations which were much more strategic. So the play was always to be positioned as a team as more strategic business partners, so trusted professional partners, as opposed to order takers. So in the past, we were managing this great machine that we built. I always call it the Ferrari, but what we're trying to do is build the Tesla, which is more maneuverable. So Teslas are easier to handle, but also a much better experience. So the mission was always to build a Tesla, and to almost the Ferrari was over-engineered. In terms of the tech consulting in particular. So there were some issues around our brand. So EY has a fantastic corporate brand, but we're not really known to be a tech brand. And despite the $1 billion investment in tech, we were finding in our process that we were getting at least 70% of our offers were declining. We had a 30% renege rate, and it was very clear that if we continue to do what we had always done, we would continue on the same momentum. So I think with these conversations, it's really tapping into the business and like understanding what their challenges are, but also bringing data and market insights into those meetings. And I think for the first time, it was almost an epiphany moment for the business, that they had a team that were really willing to engage and that would also bring in best practice. Bringing in VR was a complete no-brainer because, for me, I'm one of the, I guess, my manifestos for the team is that we absolutely swarm around a project or a problem. So in particular with tech, there was a lack of a tech brand. We had massive talent erosion in the process, but not only that, we also had renege and decline rate problems. So we kind of worked together on almost like a SWAT team, bringing the business with us, but also presenting options and solutions. And the manifesto is build small pilots. So if we can build a small pilot and scale, we can kind of almost market test it within EY. And that's very much the kind of manifesto that we have as a team. And we've been able to make incremental change. And we're not quite there yet. There's still a lot of change to happen. And this year will continue to be a little bit bumpy. But one of the things that I did very successfully was stand up a transformation projects team. So we have 11 projects across every aspect of the recruitment life cycle. So these are big changes, such as the one EY tax and tech recruitment process, which we can talk about, but also really tiny changes, which really have a massive impact to students. And I'll talk about one of these changes because it directly impacts me. And I think that sometimes organizations need to walk the talk, So when I came into EY, I purposely sat the graduate process myself just to get a bit of dip my toe in the water to understand what are we putting students through. And I'd really recommend that every single person here actually sits one of their own recruitment processes. And actually, I found the process quite was great, but there was an aspect of it around the D&I piece that I felt perhaps could be an opportunity to improve. So, for example, declaration and how do we actually gain demographic declarations from diverse students, and how we're actually asking the permission and what kind of questions should we be asking. So this season we've made a small change, which I feel is much more aligned to how students may want to declare themselves, and we've worked with our employee resource groups, and that's a very difficult change because actually it's people haven't quite got to the bottom of those characteristics, but we've been very bold in changing those, and we'll be monitoring that over time. So no stone was left unturned from very big transformation opportunities down to really small ones, which may actually have more of an impact to students at scale.
Becky, that was such a deep, honest answer. And I absolutely love the idea of sitting through your own process. We're coming to the end of our time. So I just want to ask you briefly a question we received from the audience. So what, in just a few words, was the response of students to the skill building of those simple skills? The comment is, curious how the development of those softer power skills goes over with a generation that has grown up using shorthand text speak. I haven't seen too many business emails riddled with emojis. So did you find students were wanting to learn some of those basics, or were they resistant?
So with the VR in particular, this is really interesting because, the VR was a a 5-week program, hybrid program, so in person and also led via virtual reality. We had interactive fun and games, but also very much more serious client-facing fictional environment, and it is an absolutely a realistic job preview of what a student might do if they had accepted if they accept a role at EY. And from the feedback that we've got, which is really interesting, is that the feedback lends itself more to the idea of confidence building. So students, as we know, need more support through COVID, through the loss of learning. But all of the feedback that we received talked more to confidence. So feeling more confident around their own skills and ability, feeling more confident around their soft skills. So I believe it was 92% of the interns that came through the virtual reality SIP program felt that they were more confident around their communication skills. Also, seeing EY as a tech brand, so we were able to demystify some preconceived ideas around EY, and that was at 100%. There was also areas where they felt that we had helped them build tech skills and business and tech acuity. So, the virtual reality experience, not only, well, first of all, we have 100% conversion rate on the VR experience. And in terms of cost ROI and cost per conversion, it's a complete no-brainer, because we know that we've got attrition in our process. So that investment will actually pay dividends for EY. But not only that, 68% of those interns were females, right? And these are tech interns, whereas there are only 6% of females are actually interested in working from a non-tech brand. So for us, there was almost a win-win, in that not only are we going to get more diversity, but also we're helping students. And that's really important right now, is what are we actually doing as organisations to help the next generation of students to really fulfil their potential. And a lot of this is around capability and soft skills development and strengths building. And that's definitely an area of focus for us as we go into this season.
Incredible. Well, I could personally listen to this for another 30 minutes, but unfortunately our time is up. Lindsey, I always say this to you, you have a lot to come up with now in terms of key takeaways, but I'd love your view. What are some of the things you're taking away from what Becky said?
Thank you so much to Becky Foden for being such an empathetic, transparent, thoughtful guest on Future Strong. We appreciate hearing everything you're doing at EY. I have 3 takeaways. One is just a reminder of the bigger picture of the role of TA, talent acquisition. You talked about finding hidden talent gems and shaping young people's lives for the future. I love that wrap up. And you use 3 words that I think are a good reminder for everybody to be nimble, agile, and curious. Number 2, you talked about the challenges since COVID and how far behind a lot of students are, particularly with their soft skills, and being careful not to be biased of what we think students need to know, but what they actually tell us they need to know, which can often be the really basic things, as you mentioned, communication skills, how to introduce themselves, how to write an email, really basic things that are very powerful. And to your point, so much of that is really based around the importance of confidence building for this generation. And third, I love that you are not afraid to disrupt, to pilot, and then scale. And you talked about the VR that EY is rolling out in partnership with Capfinity, using data and market insights to convince the business of how important this is. And I just want to leave everyone with the suggestion you made to sit in on your own graduate recruitment process. I think we don't hear that enough, but I think that's a really powerful reminder. So thank you, Becky Foden from EY.
Thank you so much, Lindsey. That was quite the summary. And Becky, thank you for your time and your honesty and sharing so much of your wisdom. I think you're a great combination of the empathy and the data together, which is absolutely fantastic. So we wish you all the very best. You're going out on campus now, aren't you? Your team is at 35 campuses that you're going out in the next few weeks?
So 4 days, 35 campuses, and to the point where, you know, it's fully personalised experience across every single university. So the team are fully empowered to bring their stations to life. So we've got smoothie bars, we've got giant Jenga games, we've got curling competitions, we've got balloon wars, flower wars. So, you know, there isn't a it's a completely personalized experience based on the geography as well. So I'm really excited next week to be out on campus, and also to really kind of the team, you know, it's really important for the team to have fun, right? I've got a whole team that are Gen Zs actually, so it's important that when they have fun, it means that we're engaging as a brand and that people will want to work for us, right? And EY is a great organisation. It's got a great culture. It's really inclusive. So hopefully next week, fingers crossed, we're going to show people a bit, I guess, a little glimpse into EY.
I'm sure you will. And for anyone who wants to see what Becky gets up to, she's a very avid LinkedIn poster. So definitely have a look. And my colleague Hayley has posted in here some of the videos that are currently online of the interns taking VR that you can see on Becky and her colleague Ollie's post. So we wish everyone great weekends. We encourage you all to come back in 2 weeks' time when a postponed episode with Brian Quick will be on, and he will be talking about Brian and Fiona. They are going to be talking about really how is it that Abbott Healthcare have been able to go out to schools and create schools-based interns to bring more women into STEM, and Fiona is one of those individuals. So we're really looking forward to having that episode, and Brian and Abbott have got a framework that they will readily share with everybody in any organisation, so they can take that blueprint and use it within schools for recruiting STEM women. So really looking forward to that. Hope everyone has great weekends. Becky and Lindsey, thank you for a great episode, and we will see many of you hopefully in 2 weeks' time. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. So is everyone gone?
They have now.